Hey there, I'm Paul Kaltenbach, live in Hell's Kitchen, New York City, and you're tuned to International Radio Report, 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome to the International Radio Report for Sunday, September the 4th. This is CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. We thank you for joining us today. I am Sheldon. I'm here with Jill, our usual co-hosts, for your 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. If you would like to reach us, our email address is radioreport@yahoo.com. We're live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group is International Radio Report with 834 members. We welcome Jorge joining us this week. And if you would like to listen to the show at your leisure, you can find all of our shows at our YouTube channel, also called International Radio Report. And you can subscribe to receive notices of the new shows going up there each week. We have 683 subscribers presently. So do check them out, particularly the Facebook group. Lots of great stories that go up there that people, listeners to our show and us as well, do post up stories there that don't make it to our broadcast each week. So you can check those out online on the Facebook group. So we'll get started with a story that is based here in Canada, but is making news around the world. And it is about the Montreal-based artist Arcade Fire. Radio stations pull Arcade Fire music following sexual misconduct allegations against the band's frontman. This comes from Griffin Yeager of CBC News. Several radio stations across North America have begun removing Arcade Fire's music from their lineups following recent allegations of sexual misconduct made against the Canadian band's frontman, Win Butler. According to a report published Saturday in a music news publication Pitchfork, 4 people have made allegations against Butler. CBC News was unable to independently verify these allegations. They have not been proven in court. The allegations reported by Pitchfork range from unsolicited sexual text messages and photos to forceful touching. The people told Pitchfork the alleged interactions were inappropriate based on age gaps and uneven power dynamics, and they felt they couldn't say no to Butler. In a statement, Butler denied the allegations and said all encounters were consensual and he never touched a woman against her will. By Tuesday, several stations, including CBC Music, made the decision to pull Arcade Fire's tracks. The band's world tour, which kicked off Tuesday in Dublin, has so far gone forward as planned. I can confirm that we made a quick decision over the weekend to pull the band's music, said Ian March, program director at Indie 88, a music station based in Toronto. Chuck Thompson, head of the public affairs at CBC, said CBC Music will follow suit. CBC News has reached out to Chorus Entertainment, but has yet to receive a formal response. Bill Childs, a radio host in St. Paul, Minnesota, said he's been tracking the U.S. radio stations who are also pulling the band's music. Since the news of the allegations was reported, he says at least 6 stations that routinely play the band's music had dropped the songs by sometime on Tuesday. He says that some stations have continued to play the band's songs very late at night, but suspects that they have yet to reprogram their playlists. Now we have a sort of a late update to this story. As they say in the article, that their world tour has started in Ireland, but the opening act on the show is a Canadian artist named Feist. It's been announced by her that she, quote, cannot continue on the Arcade Fire tour amid Win Butler's sexual misconduct allegations. She goes on to say, this has been incredibly difficult for me, and I can only imagine how much more difficult it's been for the people who came forward. The Canadian singer-songwriter has pulled out as the opening act on Arcade Fire's recently launched world tour after the allegations came out. Following the tour's opening 2 concerts in Dublin, the 46-year-old musician, whose real name is Leslie Feist, shared a lengthy note on social media on Thursday explaining her decision to exit the tour and why she chose to perform at the first couple of shows. She opened the statement by explaining that she was at a pub in Dublin after her band rehearsal when she read Pitchfork's recent article and commented on the 3 women as came forward. In a statement included in the article published August 27th, the Arcade Fire's multi-instrumentalist claimed every interaction with the accusers was consensual. She goes on to say, "We didn't have any time to prepare for what was coming, let alone a chance to decide not to fly across the ocean into the belly of this situation," she wrote on her Facebook page. "This has been incredibly difficult for me, and I can only imagine how much more difficult it's been for the people involved." So anyway, she has pulled out. As to what's going to happen to the rest of the tour, it hasn't been decided. They are scheduled to return to North America, and they're actually scheduled to perform here in Montreal later in the year. We haven't heard anything about whether additional shows or the tour itself are going to be canceled. I do find a little odd, though, is again, it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. This seems to sort of get pushed to the back a little bit sometimes now. It could be very true, that he is guilty, but, everybody's entitled to a fair trial. Sometimes it seems that the media jumps on these things right away and they jump to judgment, which may be the case going on here at this point. I'm not really too sure, but it seemed rather quick to make the decision to pull the music to begin with.
In this case, it's 3 women, so, I think they prefer to be on the safe side, even though they haven't yet been accused of anything. And the other thing, I think, for the future will be where the tickets haven't been put on sale yet. Mm-hmm. See if ticket sales are suffering from that or not.
Yeah, the fact that he reacted and says that, something obviously did go on, but he claims that it was consensual. Yeah. So I guess that sort of, kind of tilts it maybe one way a little more than the other direction. So anyways, the radio stations acted very quickly. I'm sure there'll be more about this with respect to their music being played. And like you said, we'll see if it has an impact on the tour and on ticket sales and what have you. So that will be an ongoing developing story. But in the meantime, if you were listening to a station that did play their music, chances are you're not hearing it anymore.
Yeah, and I think it reflects the state of our time now, where nobody wants to take a chance anymore.
Yeah, better safe than sorry is, I guess, the rule of thumb that's being followed.
So according to consultant Fred Jacobs, the public radio sector is losing its momentum. This is by Paul McLean of Radio World. Public radio's vital signs are flat and its momentum is down. That's the conclusion of researcher Fred Jacobs. He is in New Orleans presenting his company's study, The State of Public Radio in Post-Pandemic America, to the Public Radio Content Conference. He said nearly a fifth of public radio fans don't listen to the radio for 1 hour a day. Also, while 3 out of 4 have a regular radio at home, this is a new low point. Meanwhile, only about half of millennials have a radio at home. He noted that, like public radio listeners in general, the survey's respondents continue to age, now averaging 64.3 years old, and only 9% of the respondents were under 44. There are positive findings, though. Public radio's core values, such as trustworthiness and objectivity, are alive and well. Digital listening to public stations is at least steady. Alternative news sources, including daily podcasts and newsletters, look promising for the sector. The COVID recovery is accelerating, though in-car listening is still off from pre-pandemic levels. Meanwhile, ownership of smart speakers have plateaued. Jacobs said radio streaming is the top reason respondents use smart speakers, and he calls this a huge opportunity for public radio. Podcasting, Jacobs found, continues to be a mixed bag because it is growing but eating into radio listening. Podcast commercials, he added, may be losing some of their impact. Jacobs said Bluetooth has surpassed FM radio as the feature most often mentioned as very important among new car buyers in the survey. But broadcast radio continues its in-car audio dominance as far as the percentage of time spent in the car. One of the trademarks of Jacobs' tech survey reports is a pyramid showing the percentage of respondents who use various technologies and media, from video and newspapers to connected cars and smartwatches. Smartphones are the most mentioned. HD radio was the least among the options shown. I think we see, first of all the differences between the generations. Millennials are probably the most connected, and I would see them probably using much more things like smart speakers and smartphones to get content. And of course, that's one of the reasons Bluetooth could be popular, because you can connect your phone to your car radio. Car is, we say it often, the number one place probably people listen to the radio in general. And there's still a lot of people not working in their office, or just sometimes a few days a week. So that will probably cut some of the radio listening. I don't know. It's an interesting shift in I think the culture of where we get our news and information. And 64 years old is the average age, they said. So it's like older people are still holding on to their radios. And I can see millennials not having radios at home. I would tend to think that today's young generation is probably not going to the store to get a radio.
Yeah, for public radio listening, that age is really high, 64.3 years old. Public radio programming is generally longer. It's more feature oriented, and if you see things like on television and videos, everything is short and snappy. They don't stay with one subject very long. I think younger people, the attention span is shorter. They want something quick, fast. Let's get it out there and get it done and move on to the next thing. Whereas public radio, same as public television, have these longer programs. They have less commercials. They don't have breaks. I remember public TV in New York State and Vermont, close to us here in Montreal, say that they're having difficulty in their funding drives now. That people don't have the attention span to watch a 1 hour uninterrupted by commercial television show anymore. So, the same thing can be happening with public radio, I think. So you're getting an older audience that can lock onto a program for a longer period of time. The younger people are just not doing that.
Yeah, and public radio is much more of a educational type of radio. You learn things there, and like you said, the programs are much longer. And when you're younger, maybe you're not going towards that type of content that much. You want to have the quick news. It's like, what's happening today in short bits of 30 seconds, and that's it. Okay, I know my stuff now. I saw something this week about the BBC, which is also a public broadcaster. They were saying that more and more people are actually saying that with the license fees going, and the fact that some content might become paid content that you'll have to subscribe to, a lot of people are saying, well, maybe I'm not going to listen to the BBC anymore. So there's a shift. People are really searching for new ways to get their news and get their information.
Yeah, it's like these entertainment TV shows that sort of try to present themselves as news.
Yeah.
With 30-second clips of a story, and then it's flash quick to another one. I actually know some people who consider those programs to be news broadcasts. Yeah. And even our news broadcasts are changing too. You see a lot of Definitely. Just, somebody with a video screen behind them, and you got to watch the pictures. It's the in-depth report is just not there anymore. So times are changing.
Yep.
What can we say?
Definitely.
We move overseas to Serbia. Some interesting things going on there, presented by Reporters Without Borders via Radio World. A Serbian local radio station has been threatened by a powerful businessman. Reporters Without Borders calls on the Serbian authorities to guarantee the safety of journalists at OK Radio, a leading local radio station in the southeastern town of Vranja, whose work is being obstructed by increasingly violent threats from Dejan Nikolic, a powerful local businessman known as Kantar. Kantar has been exerting constant and growing pressure on OK Radio for several months because it is opposing his plan to build an illegal gambling room that would encroach on the building that houses the radio station. The threats against OK Radio's staff are very worrying and obstructing the work of the journalists, said the head of RSF's European Union and Balkans desk. In accordance with our April 2022 recommendations, we call on the Serbian authorities to take steps to improve journalists' security. There is an urgent need to restore a safe environment for this radio station's journalists so they can resume working normally. Press freedoms must not be gagged by fear. OK Radio is a well-established radio station that broadcasts local news. Most of its funding comes from the income of a cafe called the No Comment Cafe that is attached to the radio station. In March, OK Radio's owner told the police he was getting telephone threats from Kantar. Then the cafe was ransacked at the start of June. Kantar began construction on his illegal gambling room on the 6th of June, walling up the windows of the radio station. Representatives of Journalists Association with the Standing Working Group for the Safety of Journalists, an entity created by the Serbian government in 2020 to respond more effectively to attacks on journalists, visited on June 15th and voiced their support for OK Radio. Kantar went to No Comment Cafe and reiterated his threats on the 16th of June. He was arrested the same day. The strongman's harassment has taken various forms, from threatening phone calls to smashing the cafe's windows. He even sent one of his men to the cafe carrying a phone on which Kantar could be heard screaming threats against the radio station's journalists. Kantar's imprisonment has not stopped him from continuing his threats. In late June, he targeted a member of the Standing Working Group for the Safety of Journalists by means of fake arrest warrants posted in the streets of the town, accusing Matic of destroying the city. Kantar even continued to threaten journalists when he appeared in court, while friends and associates gathered outside wearing T-shirts with the words, "Vučić, help us," a reference to Serbia's president, and displaying signs saying "Justice for Kantar," suggesting that he is a victim. After the hearing, OK Radio's reporters said publicly that they did not feel safe. Kantar is both extremely influential and feared in the region. A local court ordered the destruction of the wall erected in front of OK Radio, but no builder is prepared to carry out the job for fear of reprisals from Kantar. 2 employees have left OK Radio because they felt they were in danger. Other Serbian media outlets are also reluctant to cover this case for the same reasons. As the No Comment Cafe's inability to keep operating has deprived OK Radio of its main source of funding, the Association of Independent Electronic Media has launched a fundraising drive for the radio station. This is unbelievable.
Yeah. You know, we talk about how governments are often controlling and trying to shut down things, but we have not, we got to also understand that powerful corporations and powerful businessmen can also use ways to try to shut down or try to intimidate. It's sad.
Yeah. What they're going to be charging him with, and how, whether he'll be released and will go back to his same old ways. It seemed like he didn't even care being arrested. He found ways to continue the harassment even while imprisoned or in court. So I could understand those journalists not feeling very safe at their radio station.
Definitely. So what's happening with our son? Well, our son this week was also quite active. Things are quieting down a little bit more. There is a possibility of a little bit of geomagnetic storming also. There is a coronal hole that is sending out some solar wind, and that could affect us today, September 4th or 5th. And, of course, that could degrade conditions from time to time. But we see a little more of a quiet week ahead right now. Solar flux is around 115, and the sunspot number is at 67. And, the best way to see how propagation is to turn on a radio and listen.
This is Margie Barrett of Lansdale, Pennsylvania, listening to the International Radio Report every Sunday morning at 10:30 on TKUT 90.3 FM Montreal.
Pop Shop Radio, second anniversary with a 100 kilowatt bash. That's going to be something interesting via Tony Pavic, Pop Shop Radio. So mark your calendars for Friday, 9th of September 2022, as our second anniversary special show will be airing from ORS in the Moosbrunn, Austria transmitter site at 2200 hours UTC on 9550 kilohertz with 100 kilowatts of music pow power. The beam on this will be towards the Americas. The last 100 kilowatt transmission on the 1st of July was heard loud and clear across the Atlantic and all over Europe. Hope you'll tune in. On the Pop Shop Radio webpage, popshopradio.ca, Tony writes, from the town of Hope and Supernatural, British Columbia in Canada, we are Pop Shop Radio, Canada's international voice on shortwave. Pop Shop Radio goes around the world to bring you great stuff from all over. We play a whole variety of pop music, such as records from the 60s and 70s that were played on top 40 radio stations, not only in North America, but also on offshore radio and stations like Radio Luxembourg. To make it fun, we also include stuff that didn't make the top 10 and even reach back into the 30s to the 50s to dig up great sounds at 45 and 78 RPM. We like to show that music doesn't have to be in English to be great, stopping off in places like Sweden, Finland, the Czech and Slovak republics, Germany, France, Brazil, South Africa, Singapore, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. We find cool records for you to groove to. We mixed it all in the style of top 40 radio of the 60s and 70s with jingles and real records played by a real DJ. We are everything that the boring FM corporate stations that have no personality and say they play the best variety are not. Last but not least, Pop Shop Radio's made in the town of Hope in British Columbia in Canada. Pop Shop Radio can be heard via Channel 292 from Germany and WRMI Radio Miami International in Florida. So there's a complete schedule and information available at popshopradio.ca. So you got to mark your calendar if you want to hear this special transmission from Austria of Pop Shop Radio. Once again, this will be Friday, September the 9th at 2200 hours UTC on 9550 kilohertz. That should give a pretty good signal here in the North America, at least in the East Coast.
Yeah, as we're getting into September now, you're noticing that the days are getting shorter, the nights are getting longer. So I think 9550 at 2200 will probably propagate quite well with 100 kilowatts beamed at the Americas. Tony Pavic is the man behind Pop Shop Radio out in Hope, British Columbia. And he's also a very active shortwave listener. He's a member of our Canadian International DX Club and likes to send us a lot of his interesting shortwave loggings that he makes from the west coast of Canada. So we wish Tony luck with that broadcast. Yep. We'll all try to tune in and listen to it. Sounds like a pretty interesting station, sort of a throwback to the old top 40 radio days, but including, as he says, a lot of international music as well. So we'll post this up on our Facebook page as well, and you can check out their page, popshopradio.ca. We have some really good news to wrap up our stories today. This one comes from New Zealand via Mike Terry in the UK, via Glenn Hauser's World of Radio. And it was published in the Pacific Media Watch on September the 1st. Radio New Zealand Pacific resumes shortwave analog service to the Pacific region. RNZ Pacific has resumed its shortwave analog service to the Pacific region between the hours of 5 and 9 a.m. New Zealand time, starting September the 1st. RNZ Pacific broadcasts in digital and analog shortwave to radio stations and individual listeners in the Pacific. The digital service is available via satellite and the analog shortwave can be accessed by anyone with a shortwave radio. The resumption of the analog service will allow listeners in remote locations with a domestic shortwave radio to hear RNZ Pacific 24 hours a day, made possible with extra funding from the New Zealand government. RNZ Pacific will run 3 different frequencies at various times: 7425 kilohertz, 9700 kilohertz, and 11725 kilohertz. For the full schedule of shortwave frequencies, you can check out the RNZ Pacific website. When we last checked it, it wasn't completely updated yet, though, for the new schedule, but you can check that out and keep an eye on it. The DRM digital service during breakfast hours will continue on transmitter 2 for partner stations around the Pacific region. The RNZ Pacific's flagship daily current affairs program, Pacific Waves, is widely listened to across the region and is also broadcast by the BBC Pacific Service. So that's great news.
Yeah, it is, because there's too many stations right now kind of focusing on DRM, thinking that's the way to go. And they actually understand that analog is really important for the Pacific region. So that's really good news that they understand that, contrary to many other broadcasters that maybe should learn a lesson from Radio New Zealand here. And Radio Australia also should have taken note of this, because Radio New Zealand is taking over and is pretty much replacing what Radio Australia was all about. So there's upcoming ham radio contest.
Yeah, quite an active weekend coming up, so I'm sure you can find some 1 or 2 of these maybe, or more, that you might like to participate in, or just tune in and listen. First off, the First Class CW Operators Club is holding the FOC QSO party, 0100 to 2359 Zulu, September the 10th. It is all HF bands except the work bands, and it is in CW.
Worked All Europe DX Contest, SSB, from 0 hours Zulu, September 10th to 2359 Zulu, September 11th. Organized by the Deutscher Amateur Radio Club. Bands 3.5, 7, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz in single sideband.
We have the Straight Key Century Club Weekend Sprintathon, 1200 Zulu, September 10th to 2359 Zulu, September 11th. It's 160 through 6 meters, excluding the work bands. That is also in CW mode only.
There's the ARRL September VHF contest, 1800 Zulu, September 10th to 0300 Zulu, September 12th, organized by the American Radio Relay League. All amateur bands 6 meters and up. All legal modes are permitted, while CW and SSB phone are the most common. MSK 144, FT8, and FM only are gaining popularity.
The North American CW Sprint, 0100 to 0400, September 11th, organized by the National Contest Journal. That one is 80, 40, and 20 meters only, and it is CW.
And there's the Four States QRP Group Second Sunday Sprint, 0100 hours Zulu to 0200 hours Zulu, September 12th, organized by the 4 states, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas QRP Group. Bands are 160, 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. The modes, CW, SSB, QRP stations only, so it's low power.
Just noticed in reading those that we are coming up to the anniversary of September the 11th. That always produces a number of activities on radio. Quite often they rebroadcast a lot of the radio as it happened on September 11th.
Yep.
And there are often some special events, radio stations operating on the ham bands to mark the anniversary. Tune around, check out around September 11th. There are always special things going on. We'll, if we come across any during the week, we'll post them up on our Facebook page as well. It's always been a time when different groups and organizations, including radio stations, broadcasters, and the amateur radio community pays tribute to the people that were lost on September the 11th.
And we are out of time.
We thank you for tuning in to us today. You can check out the show again and previous shows on our YouTube channel. And we do encourage you to join the Facebook group, International Radio Report, where we do post a lot of information during the week, any late breaking news or what have you, and also the stories that we've featured on the show today and the list of upcoming contests. So that is International Radio Report group on Facebook. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you again next Sunday on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.